Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Hey there, just before we get into the podcast, a quick reminder, we could use your financial help. Please support us on Patreon so we can keep on keeping on. Check the Patreon links to donate. Hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back. This is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. Today we're talking books and writing and stuff with Joan Havelange. Hello, Joan.
Hello, Dennis.
And where are you calling from, or where am I reaching you today?
Russell, Manitoba, near the Mississippi Ski Hill.
Oh, of course it is. Easy for you to say.
Yeah, well, no kidding.
Is that near Brandon, or?
We're about 2 hours north of Brandon. Oh. But it's the land of the lakes. There are many lakes, and probably Manitoba. I don't know if it's only Manitoba Ski Hill, but anyway, they have a ski hill here, in, just about a half an hour north of town, Mississippi.
Okay, and how big is Russell actually?
Oh, probably no more than 1,800.
Ah, well, that's
max.
That's
max.
three times bigger than Radisson, so.
Well, give or take a few.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it still kind of prairie there, or are you back into the?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
No, we're prairie, but there's it's not quite as flat as Saskatchewan. There's hills and valleys and all that good stuff. Not that there isn't in Saskatchewan. You get off number 1 highway and you'll see a lot of good stuff.
Oh, exactly. Joan Havelange is with us today, and an author, a published author, a traditionally published author. So, what's your story, Joan? Where did all this begin for you, the writing aspect?
Well, at one time, we lived north of the 56th parallel in Lynn Lake, Manitoba, Northern Manitoba, and I tried writing romances then, but I wasn't romantic enough, so I turned to murder.
Huh.
So anyway, one day I was, this is many years later, because you're raising kids, having a job, kids, cats, dogs, jobs, so on and so on. So anyway, I'm retired now, so I was watching an old Agatha Christie movie, and I thought, what if my protagonist wasn't quite as genteel as Agatha Christie's Miss Marple, or quite as smart as Miss Marple?
Right.
And hence, Mabel and Violet were born, and it went from there.
And those are two ladies that have a talent for trouble and finding dead bodies.
Yes, they do, bless them. And I wrote the story. Writing is easy, but editing is hard. I sent my story out, and the editor or the publishing company liked it, but apparently, even though English is my first language, I didn't write it as well. So I took an online English course.
Oh.
And improved everything immensely. So, well, enough for them to take it anyway. But I found out later that to have your first book published is quite an oddity. Usually you have a long time before it comes out. But anyway, as the editor of the publishing company said, there wasn't a lot of stories about the prairies or a mystery on the prairies. Well, Gail Bowen obviously writes in Regina, but this is rural Saskatchewan that the story takes place in.
Okay. Now, is it a actual locale, or did you make one up?
Oh no, I made one up to protect the innocent.
Okay. And the book we're talking about is called Wayward Shot. Like you said, it involves golf and murder. And
yes.
I'll read the little blurb, okay?
Yes, excellent.
Okay, Mabel and Violet, two middle-aged ladies, are golfing. Mabel hits a wayward shot over a fence into a nearby cemetery. The women go into the graveyard to look for the lost golf ball and find a dead man. He's not 6 feet under, though. Mabel's golf ball lay in the middle of his forehead. Mabel claims she didn't kill him, and she's right. But someone did. The man was murdered. And then Mabel and Violet take it from there, I assume.
Yes, they do. Yes, they decide. Mabel's the big push. Violet is sort of the sidekick, who is the sane one, and Mabel is out there, and she's never coming back. And they try to solve the murder, and there's a newly appointed RCMP officer, freshly out of the academy, who doesn't quite know how to handle these two ladies, and they get into a little mischief along the way, but eventually, of course, they solve the mystery. Anyway, I was published in March of this year, and since then I've written another one, Death and Denial, which takes place in Egypt, and this one has now been accepted, and it'll be published next March, so I've been quite lucky about all this.
So that's going to be, now I see a pattern here, you're going to have one out every spring.
Well, if when God willing and the water doesn't rise, as Tommy Hunter used to say, or something,
yep.
some such thing like that.
Right.
Yes, yeah. So far, so good. And then I have, well, that one's being published. I have another one that I'm writing now, and it's called The Trouble with Funerals. So there's these people probably should have left the planet anyway. So anyway, there's always something for them to solve.
So what is your writing routine? We're talking with Joan Havelange today here on Talking Books. Book we're talking about, first of all, is Wayward Shot. So do you have a set writing routine now?
Well, you pretty well have to. You have to make it like a job, but only as a fun job. And in the summer, of course, I golf. I like to golf in the morning, so I write later on in the afternoon. But in the winter, I go to the gym every morning and write again in the afternoon. So I'm sort of an afternoon writer. So anyway, you have to write 2 to 3 hours. If you're on a roll, it can go quite fast, and then you think, oh, gee, I guess I should make supper.
What makes you smile when you get up in the morning?
Oh, just life. I tell you, we are so blessed to live in this country. My family has health. I have health. Everybody's doing well. You live in little Russell, Manitoba. It's like living in a bubble. There's chaos and whatever in the world, but, we live in a darn fine. You can complain about your country or your politicians, and rightly so, but we're well protected. So I'm just so blessed to be living here.
And that's Russell, Manitoba, but you mentioned earlier something about Lynn Lake, Manitoba, mining community way up there. Now, did you ever run into this person? She has some kind of cartoon series, For Better or For Worse, I think it is.
Yes, Lynn Johnson.
Right.
Yes, her husband was the dentist up there.
That's what I heard.
And she wrote cartoons. Oh yes, I used to see her, but there was the population of Lynn was probably maybe 14,000, and there was no, when we went up there was no road. There was a railroad. There was no road, so you'd either fly in. We had, I think, like the runway in Lynn Lake. Transatlantic flights, that was emergency place for them to land, so it was a big runway. Oh. And we had at least 2 to 3 jets a day come up to Lynn Lake. But it cost more to go north and south than it would cost to go over to Europe, so it was a little pricey. But I mean, it was a good place. It was I think an interesting place to live at that time. But since then, the mine has closed, and I don't know, everybody spread 4 ways on Sunday.
Right. So you're a professional writer, let's call you. That's your job, like you said, Wayward Shot, your first novel involving golf and murder. Why golf, of all things?
I like golf. Well, it's what if. Any mystery, I guess, is an ordinary thing that's happening in your life. But what if it went sideways? What if something odd happened? I mean, I don't know if you golf, but if you golf, you do have shots that don't go where they're supposed to go. So what if there was at one golf course I did golf at, did have a graveyard at the end of one of the holes, and that just stayed back in my mind. And then when I was writing this, oh yes, that would work. So you just have something odd that happens, and anything. Well, even when I take the ladies to Egypt. Well, what if this happens? And you just go with it,
Right. And people always say, or you always hear them ask writers, where do you get your ideas? But like you said, I think it comes down to that simple what if question, like what if, as your book, the golfers find a dead body? Well, what happens next? Oh, well, what if they're in a town with a new RCMP guy? Well, you know what I'm saying? And then you kind of, experts such as yourself can take it somewhere. I have tried fiction. I've been writing the same book since 1996. And it's gone through I don't know how many changes and I'm not a fiction writer, but I'm going to keep trying just for fun. So I know what you talk about.
I love how you say professional. That's so sweet. It's just I guess I have a very vivid imagination, and if you're writing factual things, I think that's harder because you can't mess with that. This happened, that happened, and whatever happened. If it's in your imagination, well, you can make anything happen.
You can make anything. You can make the town as big as small as you want. The people as tall or as short as you want. They can be wide, thin, etc. The golf course can be, par 5, 72,000 yards, or whatever you golf people talk about. I don't know. Or a tiny, what do they call those? Par 3. So the whole world is there. So Joan Havelange is with us today here on Talking Books, etc. As you know, because you're a full-time listener person out there, Wayward Shot, the first novel from BWL Incorporated.
Yes.
So what's the hardest lesson you think as a professional writer you had to learn?
Well, first I had taken a writing, or not a writing course, but I had to take, as I said, English is my first language, but apparently whatever I learned in school just filtered out of my brain. Anyway, punctuation is really important, and
really?
structure and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, no kidding. Like, when you're writing it, you write it, I think it was Terry Pratchett that said the first draft is you're writing the story for yourself, and that's very true. So you can't get excited and say, oh, this is really good, let's send it off to a publisher, and they're going to go, oh, I don't think I want this one, because that's too much work. Editors don't normally do all that grunt work, punctuation, so on and so forth for you. They'll do some, but they're not going to. There's hordes of writers, so why would they take somebody that has a lot of work? Because goodness knows how many they get a day or a week or a month or whatever. So that's hard. And the life lesson from writing I've learned since I published is that you have to do a lot of the promoting yourself. And at first you go, I don't know, that's a lot of work, but it's your baby, so you better get out there and do it.
That's right. And it's BWL Incorporated. Now, how did you come in contact with them?
Just send it out to a publisher, a founder. There's a list of Canadian publishers, or reputable publishers. That's not really the word, but I mean, you can go online and find these publishers, and BWL is Canadian publisher. So this is really a prairie story. I'm a prairie girl writing about a prairie story and being published by a prairie publisher, and they're from Alberta, BWL. And they publish all genres. They don't do literary, but I'm not sure if they do science fiction or not, but they do most genres anyway. So anyway, I was lucky enough to get picked up by them, and from thence I came. And
it's available, I assume, most everywhere?
Yes. The publishing company, I'm published in Barnes & Noble, Kohl's, Indigo, all the ebooks online, Amazon, whatever, Kobo or whatever, all those ones too. And they have, BWL also has authors in Australia and England, so my books are available, wherever. So it's not that I'm a world writer or anything, but they are out there for people, so that's kind of good.
Did you, going back to your younger years, it was in a small town in Saskatchewan, you say. Did you read much as a child?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Those are back in the day. I'm very ancient, you see. And that's back in the day when TV was just coming out. And we lived in this very small town, as I said. You knew everybody in town, the names of everybody's pet. And on the railroad, we had a train that would come in, and they'd bring in a box of library books. And of course, they had books at school, but these were fresh books. And you just go through that box of books and hardly wait for the next one to come. Because that was, you lived in small town Saskatchewan, but you could go anywhere if you read a book.
And, you don't have to be tied down to, well, our family farm was near Denholm, Saskatchewan, and my wife's was near Fielding, Saskatchewan, and now we live in Radisson, which is close by both of them, so I know of which you speak. Is there one book, though, over the years that has influenced you the most, do you think?
I don't really know. I've always liked mysteries, but I read all, I'll read biographies, and I'm sort of eclectic. I'll read whatever, but mysteries are probably my right now. My favorite author is another Canadian author, is Linwood Barclay.
Yes.
He is.
That's
have you read him? He's
Linwood, I think, right?
Yeah, Lin, yeah.
Yep. I think I've tried a couple times. I don't know if I've finished, but...
Okay, it may be mystery isn't your thing, but because he has humor in his and a lot of twists and turns. Some you can, TV plots. I don't know if you've ever read Save the Cat. It's how they do plot out how movies and books should go. You have to this, and it's like a pattern. And a lot of movies or TV shows, there's a pattern. You can pretty well know what's going to happen next if you've read Save the Cat. It's sort of a how-to book, and it's very cookie cutter,
Right.
So this is kind of fun to read somebody that doesn't do the cookie cutter.
And Wayward Shot, about golf and murder. Now, you say you travel a lot, over 40 countries. When did all that begin, your traveling days?
Well, I started traveling when my husband was still alive, and we retired back to Saskatchewan, and we traveled some from the north too, but we traveled quite a bit then, and then after he passed, my oldest daughter and I traveled quite a lot, and I've enjoyed every country I've been to. I've had great times, and it's been interesting, and it's a very educational I don't go for education, I go for enjoyment, but it's great to see all that, but it's always lovely to come back to Canada because, it's, I love Canada, that's the way to go, but I do love visiting other countries.
And Wayward Shot takes place, though, in Saskatchewan, yep. And now the next one coming up, Death and Denial, you say is set in Egypt. So
yes.
Agatha Christie had a Death on the Nile book. How would you
sort of...
Sorry?
Oh, well, this is sort of a tongue-in-cheek of Death and Denial, perhaps.
Right.
It's not really, but it's sort of like she would like to be Hercule Poirot, but she is not. And, language barriers and all that good stuff, and she's a little pig-headed, my protagonist, and she has a few miscues, which makes things, nothing should go evenly or it's not interesting.
Oh, of course not. There's always got to be a twist, as it were, twists and turns. Like it goes back to the what if. What if that happened? But no, everybody's already done that. But what if instead of A, she went to D, etc. Right?
Exactly.
Is that how it works?
Exactly. I remember reading something about somebody that you go across it. Well, I did direct for quite a few years, direct the Little Theatre for 15 years.
Right.
And if you go across and just open the door, that's not very interesting. But what if someone burst in the door before you open it? Or what if you couldn't get the door open? You need problems to solve to make it interesting.
And your books, Wayward Shot, we'll keep plugging it because we want people to go and get it. Joan Havelange is the author. Wayward Shot, not. How would you compare your style? Are you like Agatha Christie, Linwood Barclay, Lee Child? Is there any way you can compare, maybe?
No, never in any of those leagues. But it's a cozy mystery. The people that die probably needed to leave the planet. Of course, you don't like the killer, obviously, but there's comedy but there is a puzzle. There's always a puzzle. And the editor for Wayward Shot, when she finished editing and she gave it back to the publisher, and I was CC'd on it, and she said she did not know who had done it until the very last. So I figured I did my job.
Right.
But even if they did figure out who did it, then they feel superior to your protagonist, and that's okay too, as long as they're entertained and there's a puzzle.
Now, in Death and Denial, is it just one protagonist, or do?
The Violet is there as well.
Oh, Mabel and Violet return. Oh, okay.
Mabel. Yes, they do. Mabel is sort of a little. Violet kind of pulls her back a bit. There are two sides to the coin. One is always ready to jump in. The other one is a little more cautious. So they kind of play off each other. But I do like the two characters because they're so true to each other. They're both very different, but they're very loyal and sort of protective of each other. And so I think that's kind of a good quality for both of them.
Then I think it's good to have teams like Cagney and Lacey, or Simon and Simon, or even Sherlock Holmes and Watson. They were always bouncing things off each other. The real Watson, not the Nigel Bruce kind of Watson.
Well, there's one part in Wayward Shot where the RCMP officer says, well, you're not Batman and Robin. And then he looks at their faces and they're both deciding who is Batman and who is Robin. So there's a little, and the RCMP officer, my police are not dumb and stupid. I don't want that. They're smart, but the girls just get into trouble and kind of get there despite themselves. But I don't like books where they make the police look stupid, because they're not, or they, so I don't do that.
Joan Havelange is with us. Joan Havelange today here on Talking Books. Joan, what absolutely excites you right now?
Well, I don't know. Life is just pretty good. I couldn't name one thing. I have a beautiful family. I have 4 grandchildren. 2 are in the military. One's a major in the Air Force, another's a master corporal in the Army. And I have 2 grandchildren are graduating from high school. They're twins, and they're graduating from high school this year. That excites me, what they're doing. My children are all healthy. I don't know, just life is good. Life is good. I cannot possibly complain about a thing. Everything is good. I sound like Mary Sunshine, but it is very good.
Now, your daughter, you've mentioned, is also a published author. Almost a dozen books out. Now, who influenced whom on this one, you or her?
Well, she lives on Vancouver Island, Yvonne Rediger, and she's written quite a few books, different genres. She's tried out different ones. I'm the mystery. She's starting to go into cozy mysteries, but she started out with fantasy fiction and all and good stuff. But yeah, I've been very. She's been given, because she started before I did, and she's sure, Mom, you can do it. Just do it. And so she was encouraging. So Mom got into it and did it.
Okay.
She is. She was out there first, that's for sure.
And back to Wayward Shot for just a moment, about the 2 middle-aged ladies are golfing and find a guy with a golf ball smack in the middle of his forehead. He's dead. It sounds to me, the first thing that came to mind was that sounds just like something, in a good way, that would open up a show such as Bones, because every episode they were finding dead bodies in weird places.
Yes, that's true. Yes, that's true. Yeah. Well, many years ago, I was golfing with my son, and he is a good golfer. And he said, I'll wait until hit, because he can hit farther than me, obviously. Well, most people can. I do love golf, but I'm not particularly proficient at it. Anyway, and so he hit over the hill, and he said, wouldn't it be funny if I saw the word Titleist in the middle of somebody's forehead? And that just stuck in my head. And that happened ages and ages ago. And stuff sticks in your head, and you think, yeah, I could do that.
I can do that, right. I think that's... Maybe any words of encouragement you can give to would-be authors or writers?
Oh yeah, just don't pay anybody like these fantasy. Just do not waste your money on that. If you have enough ambition or whatever, you self-publish. That's great too. I just don't have the talent or the energy to do that. But just keep writing, and it'll happen. It'll happen. I was lucky, but it will happen if you just keep at it.
Keep at it.
Yeah, and I find all writers like you belong to different writing communities, and they're all very encouraging. So belong to a writing community, have a beta reader to figure out if you've left a hole in the middle of your plot that a truck could drive through. Do all the good things, and you can find those people. People like to help people.
That's a good way to end it. We're talking with Joan Havelange today here on Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. And the first Violet and Mabel mystery is Wayward Shot, out there now. Coming out in just a few months, actually, will be Death and Denial, also featuring Mabel and Violet, who are in Egypt this time. And you know what happens. What goes on in Egypt ends up in a tomb. And so thank you, Joan, very much.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I so appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.